2nd of March. It is a Wednesday. And David Rockefeller has passed away. But I want to open this up with stating, if you're watching the circus ridiculous of all timicus, meaning the mainstream press covering the electronic issues associated with wiretapping President Trump while he was running for president, let me put this into perspective. The dialogue is all wrong. The mainstream press is focused on making Trump the villain when the villain is that everything is recorded. Everything, every cell phone call, every radio broadcast, every television broadcast, every keystroke on your computer, my computer, everything that we are connected in any way, shape, or form. If you've got a television in your bedroom, you might be surprised what's on a tape, and someday you may be even blackmailed. But beyond that, the discussion should focus on the total surveillance state. It shouldn't focus on the vomitous, and I would say this corrupt, taking the dialogue away from reality. The reality is everybody is being recorded. And the only thing that keeps the knock on your door and the badges from showing up is the fact that time is known unto the devils that are, when that will be the norm. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there is no such thing as a free press. In 1880, ladies and gentlemen, John Swinton, the former chief of staff of the New York Times, made a powerful statement before the New York Press Club. Now, Swinton actually made this statement in 1880. People attribute it to a later date, but someone basically just plagiarized him. And I want to put this into perspective for you. I did this with Dave Hodges the other night. There is no such thing at this date in world history in America as an independent press. You know it, and I know it. There's not one of you who dares to write your honest opinions, and if you did, you know beforehand that it would never appear in print. I am paid weekly, Swinton speaking, for keeping my honest opinion out of the paper that I am connected with. By the way, of course, that's the New York Times. Others of you are paid similar salaries for similar things, and any of you who would be so foolish as to write honest opinions would be out in the streets looking for another job. If I allowed my honest opinions to appear in one issue of my paper before 24 hours, my occupation would be gone. The business of the journalist is to destroy the truth. Here you go. To outright lie. Gee, does that come as a surprise? To pervert. To vilify. To fawn at the feet of mammon. And to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. You know it, and I know it. Isn't that interesting? You know it, and I know it. And what folly is this toasting an independent press? Have you noticed that everybody that seems to be an illuminist desires one thing, whether it's Hollywood and their numerous Emmys and Grammys and everything else, most valued TV personality, all these self-aggrandizing, or the press club or this club, they're all giving themselves pat on the backs. We are the tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks. They pull the strings and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes. I want to go to David Rockefeller's quote. 1991, the Bilderberg Convention. Obviously, that's, 26 years ago? Here is his statement. One of the most evil, and in my opinion, one of the most wretched creatures of darkness to ever be brought on the planet. And one of the things that concerns me is what happens when the evil spirits that have possessed these men, and by the way, most of them have willingly given themselves over to possession. We're talking demonic possession. What happens when they die? Well, their human spirit goes to hell, unless he repented in the last years of his life, and I doubt that. His demonic personalities, or the legion that has inhabited all the most evil men in history, goes out looking for someone else to basically step into that body and to carry on. I call it demonic heredity. I call it demonic advancement. I call it demonic, repossession. Here's what David Rockefeller said. We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, I just quoted Swinton, Time Magazine and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. I say the mainstream press will go down in history and be judged accordingly as the mouthpieces of the destruction of this country. It's underway. Again, there is no constitution. There is one historically. The Bill of Rights historically. The executive, the judicial, and the legislative branches are all so commingled and so co-compromised that who can even count on anybody adhering to the laws? Because we now live in the time where each man does right. Each man does that which is right in his own sight. You could say each agency has its own turf, and they've become separate countries unto themselves. They have separate funding sources. Do you think the most powerful intelligence agencies in the world that have overseen drugs, corruption, guns, child trafficking are going to lack for cash? I don't think so. Rockefeller goes on to say, now listen to this, it would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practice in past centuries. I'll give you the Q version of that. We rich guys are going to decide how you peasants and vassals live. Anything you get is out of our goodness, and everything you've got we want, and we will take. You think that's far out? Watch how it plays out, ladies and gentlemen. Watch how it plays out. The minute Judge Napolitano, one of the greatest minds, in my opinion, one of the brightest minds, in my opinion, one of the most articulate and constitutionally aware judges, gets shut up and shut off Fox when he said basically British intelligence and U.S. intelligence are like Siamese twins, and this is how it works. You use someone who isn't bound by U.S. law to break U.S. law. You find someone that's not bound by British law to break British law to spy on British citizens. Everybody spies on everyone. So to vilify Russia, to vilify the United States, to vilify the NSA, anybody in the intelligence gathering business, which is everybody, but now there's a twist. The NGOs, whether it's Google, whether it's Cisco. I just put up on my website today that I think the CIA can flip one master switch and have access, instantaneous access, or shut down all of the switches in the Cisco network. What most of you should do is research the fact that when the high-tech industry even began, especially after the invention of Apple computers and everything from router companies, you name it, the people that basically were there at the beginning. The Central Intelligence Agency and other intelligence agencies took financial positions. Even they took the position of venture capitalism. Venture capitalism means you put up the money. So now you've got everybody's search results on the internet available. You've got everybody's contacts through the Faces of Death book. You have everybody's little Twitter. A little birdie told me so. Yeah, it happens to be a freaking vulture ready to tear your eyeballs out while you're still, tied down to the desert, glaring into the sun, going blind, and last thing you see is a black shadow pecking at the last thing you ever see in your life until you out and out die. I think I'm being too tame here. How do you, the average American, the people that'll watch this QCast, and, it'll be all over the place from the minute I put it up, how can you reconcile the fact that you still believe that you have a choice? Now, obviously, the choice of people to vote, especially the Electoral College, and when the truth is known, obviously Trump won the public vote also. But when the heads of the nation's top spy agencies sit there and lie to Congress, and then the congressmen give them a pass, where is the justice? Well, I got news for you. There is no justice anymore in the land. And you're about to find that out the hard way. I want to go to George Orwell, 1984, the quotes that he had. And these are just priceless. Orwell was an insider, and obviously he knew the plans of the Illuminists. He knew the plans of the ancient Egyptian priesthood. When I talk about the Egyptian priesthood, I'm talking stuff that went back to 3,000 BC, which basically they inherited from the Sumerians, which basically their writings inherited and survived Noah's flood, which basically was the knowledge of the ancients, the Golden Age. And just because the Library of Alexandria burned down doesn't mean that knowledge doesn't exist. But here's the difference. They believe their gnosis, from which they get the word Gnostics, that the secret knowledge will save them. It isn't going to save them. They basically have sought to escape the ramifications of evil. They won't. Here's what he said. Anyone who challenges, George Orwell, anyone who challenges the prevailing orthodoxy finds himself silenced with surprising effectiveness. Now listen to this. We have now sunk to a depth at which the resentment of the obvious is the first duty of intelligent men. Deny the truth. The nationalist only does not disapprove of atrocities committed by his own side, but he has a remarkable capacity for not even hearing about them. The nationalists, how about this? The rhinos? How about this? The neocons? With the whisk of their hand, with the signing of their pen. How many people have ceased to exist because of them? He was embittered, an embittered atheist, the sort of atheist who does not so much disbelieve in God, but he personally dislikes him. The second psalm, the kings of the earth have set themselves against the Lord and against his anointed, Jesus, saying, we will not have this man rule over us. Now, how about this? All propaganda is a lie, even when it's telling the truth. The only time the liars will tell the truth is when they can use it as a hook in the jaw of the unsuspecting, subconscious, former human beings that are no longer thinking or being able to come to a cognitive, reasoned conclusion, because entertainment is everything. How about this? The essence of oligarchical rule is not father-to-son inheritance, but the persistence of a certain worldview and a certain way of life. A ruling group is a ruling group so long as it can nominate its successors. Who wields power is not important, provided that the hierarchical structure remains always the same. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. I want to give you a great scripture from Solomon, a proverb. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you, ponder that, pray about it, meditate upon it. Because in order for there to be real change, the foundations would have to change. I don't see that happening. Never have I seen such exposure of the total lawlessness within the governing body of the United States, within the financial institutions. By the way, before I came to this broadcast at our studio day, and this is an office, it's not the studio. We just got through filming the final stuff to True Legends, the third series, Holocaust of Giants. It's going to be mind-blowing. So I have to sit in this is not my office, it's somebody else's office. But this is where, obviously, the video camera and microphone is. The idea that you and I can change without the foundations of this country changing is superfluous. Literally thousands of stores. Sears today, 22nd of March, made the statement. They don't think they can stay in operation. Penny's, Radio Shack. And when you hear that Walmart's having shortages, hello, here is the great disconnect. Between here and here should be something here. And that something here should tell you that the availability of goods, whether it's inexpensive shoes, whether it's electronics, whatever you get at the brick and mortar stores is no longer available. One guy said, well, I don't care. I get it on the internet. What happens when the internet goes down? What happens when your internet connection is interfered with? What happens when trucking strikes? You see, people say, well, it's not happening yet, so don't worry about it. Oh, you better worry about it. Watch Venezuela. We watched Argentina. We had, I forget the name of the gentleman that was posting from Argentina years ago talking about what it was like to live with scarcity and where you had to go out on the street with a firearm and you basically had to defend your life at every minute. That kind of mentality does not exist anymore in the United States, although there are people who are getting prepared. Unfortunately, how do I say this? Keyboard warriors. And by the way, I've been on talk radio for 25 years. I guested 5 years before that, had a newsletter before that, and was in the preparedness business. And I even had to talk to some girl. I'm sorry, I don't know her name. So if I did know her name, I wouldn't use it. I don't want to embarrass her. But I said, you can't make stupid statements and then expect people to take your articles seriously. The idea that 15% of the world's population lives on seafood. I just had that. I'll be putting that story up. 15%. Now you've got the entire Pacific Ocean dead or dying. Oh, sure, there are pockets of life. But the latest, again, 530 sieverts per hour coming out of Fukushima. Now we have the Indian nuclear reactor in a very difficult mode, and no one's going to tell the truth. Let me share this with everybody. No one's going to tell the truth except alternate news because of vilification. Remember that? I'll give it to you each time I'm probably on this QCast. Identify, vilify, nullify, destroy. The alt news is being vilified now as fake news. Isn't it interesting? The lying devils from hell are trying to tell everybody that somehow we're evil when they openly embrace evil, when they openly embrace everything that has destroyed every previous civilization. And, these guys are, I would call, Caligulans, okay? That's the Emperor Caligula on an electronic basis. And so when we take a look at history, obviously we don't know our history, therefore we don't see ourselves repeating it. When you see that comatose pile of refuse known as public education, you see the rest of the world's turning out engineers, scientists, turning out mathematicians, turning out thinkers. Take a look at China's education system or Russia. Take a look at Russian children learning how to field strip an AK-47 blindfolded in, a matter of seconds, probably I think it's sub-minute, maybe 30 seconds. And then understand this, that we have snowflakes, which is the, if you will, the entitled generation, Generation X, that believes the sum total of reality is on their gaming console and their whatever hand controller. Imagine when their power goes out. And ladies and gentlemen, if there are 500 sanctuary cities or 1,000, what happens when those cities come into direct opposition against the federal government when those people are trying to be civilly disobedient and there's no money to pay for any type of entitlement programs? I think we're in a time now where everything has changed, but the awareness of those changes hasn't hit home yet, or the end product of those. Listen to this. George Orwell, political language is designed to make lies sound truthful, murder respectable, and to give an appearance of solidity to pure wind. In other words, let me sum this one up. Political language is bovine laundry. Bovine, another word for bovine, the bull. Isn't it interesting? We either talk about a bull or a bear market. Well, if you cover the bull with a sheet, as in, linens, or as in bedding, then you've got your bull sheet out of the public appearance. By the way, I noticed that Zero Hedge used that. The idea that somehow the magic bullet exists is a great misnomer. Unless the people of God intercede, pray and fast, and I'd tell you do that, because what happens if the worst case scenario happens? I fight more with confessants. Now, you know what a confessant is? It's not someone that goes and confesses their sin to a priest in a confessional. It's those who claim to be quote-unquote Christians and don't believe any of the foundations of the Christian faith. I never thought I would see the day when there'd be 1,000 of what I would call primate Protestants, there you go, which would come to the point of actually believing that he, God, is a she. And for the scripture, behold, I am the Lord, I change not, God speaking. The scripture says, God is not a man that he should lie. For they that worship God must worship him and believe, they must worship him in spirit and in truth. God created man in his image. He didn't create Eve first. He created Adam first, marvelously sculpting Adam out of the dust of the earth and then breathing into Adam the breath of life, and Adam exploding with life. And the first thing he sees is basically supernatural resuscitation by the living God. The fervor of evil has gone beyond, I don't think I have a way to quantify it. I don't know that it can be quantified anymore. I think that you can use every adjective, every metaphor, every descriptive term and still fall so short of how to communicate to the mind of man that's been numbed, dumbed, and basically the subconscious no longer matters. Now listen to this. Newspeak was the official language. The purpose of Newspeak was not only to provide a medium of expression for the worldview and mental habits, but to make all modes of thought impossible. It was intended that when Newspeak had been adopted once and for all and old speak forgotten, our heretical thought should be literally unthinkable. 1984. Doublethink means the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. The party intellectual knows in which direction his memories must be altered. Therefore, he knows that he is playing tricks with reality. But by the exercise of doublethink, he also satisfies himself that reality is not violated. I'll say this. What is it? The fool is always justified in his own mind. George Orwell also pointed out that the first job of a leader is to create an enemy that could strike fear into the hearts of the electorate. He also said this, to see what is in front of one's nose needs a constant struggle. There are some ideas so wrong that only a very intelligent person could believe in them. You want to see that, look at the rise of the Third Reich and that what I call the Final Reich, which controls the world. On the whole, human beings wanting to be good, but not too good and not quite all the time. The idea that you and I are being totally formed into a new world globular of electronic snot, okay? Now, I'm really trying to be as in your face as, a guy with a mustache isn't cold when he comes in from the cold and all the ice melts. Advertising, I love this, advertising is the rattling of a stick inside a swill bucket. But if thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought. No one can look back on his school days and say with truth that they were altogether unhappy. When I think of my school days, obviously, let's see, I think of a lot of fun. Obviously, not all of it was right, not all of it was sanctified, but, a young man in his folly, he doesn't go around unhappy usually. And who doesn't remember A&W root beer stands, convertibles, 57 Chevy convertibles, the first Corvettes that came out, and then the cool Italian sports cars, all the neat stuff, the La Dolce Vita, the good life, Hollywood portraying it, the love movies, Three Coins and a Fountain, all the stuff taking place in Rome and the Italian Riviera or Monte Carlo or Steve McQueen movies, or any of what I would say when life was better. Now, again, the essence of being human is that one does not seek perfection. How many of you are perfectionists and driven yourself crazy and those around you? If I had more hands, I would be raising them. By the way, 5 fingers. By the way, there are no serpent staffs in the background. Can I tell you something? Some days, before I wash my mouth out with soap, I've got to wash my heart out with the Word of God and plead. Did you see this lampstand behind me, which would be screen left to you? And it's right, actually, to my right. Some challenged creation of a biological lab mishap said that's a serpent staff in the background. That's the guy that has this office. It's a light stand. There's no snakes about it. I've had people say that wearing yellow, and actually this is I guess yellow orange. I like neon colors. Okay, so this makes me a Mason. I'm not a Mason, never been a Mason. But then I also know this, that the time is coming when you anonymous posters, you anonymous slanderers, you anonymous accusers of the brethren, or you named devils that are, when the internet goes down, who are you going to talk to? Who are your people going to be when your collection of, let's just say this, when the balls of snakes you're intertwined with no longer are there? You see, it's time that people call it like it is. And it's one thing to have to fight the New World Order. It's one thing to have to fight the intelligence agencies, to fight the devil, but to fight those who claim to be the defenders of the faith, yet they've never won one person to Jesus Christ. I'm talking about Christians now, or those who claim to be. They've never fed one hungry mouth. They've never clothed anybody. They've never given, maybe $1 at Christmas to Salvation Army. They have no fruit to their faith. They have nothing. They have nothing. Yet their opinion has been, how should I say this, elevated to the point that they're fighting now God to be the gods of their own life. Good luck. Try and save yourself. It can't be done. It can't be done. The ultimate comment of George Orwell basically says, until people break their unconsciousness, they'll never have a clue. Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, I would say this. Atlas may have shrugged, but Poseidon burped. The whole idea that anybody really cares any longer. I want to end this by saying this. If you're listening to mainstream media, if you are continually fixated on the same things. By the way, all the media is covering the same thing, whether it was a terrorist incident in London, whether it's the ongoing terrorist incidents in this country, the ongoing cannibalism, the ongoing perversion. Why is it that the major networks are not dealing with WikiLeaks? The reason they're not dealing with it is because they factor so much into it, because if they're covering it up, then the statement is, what do they have to cover up? What do they have to be afraid of? So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to something I would call it 1984 beyond even George Orwell's wildest dreams. And George Orwell's utopian dreams, as he pens so eloquently, have turned into the gestalt of nightmares. They have turned into the absolute meltdown of mindlessness, of cognitive disorder, and here's a great one, the blobalization, Blobble. Remember the Blob movie, one of the science fiction movies, of the 50s? The blobalization of people just being assimilated into the hive. And I also posted a story on my website today, stevequayle.com, that dealt with the idea that the control mechanism for the hive is already in place. The control mechanism for the hive is the iPhone. Every time you see a flash mob, every time you see the herd panic, know that reaction times, know that the matrix is being built, know that the web is being built, know that the algorithms have already been built. And if you just understand exponential growth, by the time 2 people talk to 4, by the time 4 people talk to 4, and you keep going and going and going, you can have identified who is most important in each person's life and use those most important people against you. Think about that. I want to go on record as saying, I don't befriend or unfriend anybody on Facebook. My Facebook account, which I went kicking and hollering into, and also my YouTube account, was only to keep the people who are so incredibly dishonest from not only the ad revenue, but from misrepresenting me, from the point of changing my voice, from the point of chopping up and putting in what I call gerbil talk. You know, here's the deal. After 25 years, after 10,000 hours now of broadcasting, I want you to know I've learned a lot. But one thing that still surprises me is that stupid was never meant to be a permanent dwelling. You can, have stupid times in your life, okay? All of us have those. You can look back, but the day will come when all your should have done this, would have done this, could have done this, you wish you would have done that, you wish you hadn't have done that, you wish you would have said this, you wish you wouldn't have said that, all the coulda, shoulda, would have, and wished ofs, no matter good or evil, come rushing back into your mind. And at the end of the day, you'll have to say, what did I do? Now, to the veterans, God bless each and every one of you. And it should be the greatest shame in the history of the country that men and women who were ready to lay down their lives, the ones that haven't died, are suffering horribly at the hands of the Veterans Administration and the pukes in Washington, the pukes in the Potomac of self-indulgence, have let that go on, even to the point of bonusing specific heads of VAs. That's got to stop. President Trump, stop that immediately. Pull out people out of retirement. Give them pay. I'm talking doctors, nurses, surgeons, and let them start at one VA hospital in one part of the country and move across the other. But let them go immediately, and anything they need, give to them. Be like Joseph in the Old Testament. Raid the granaries to feed the people. What a blight. And when you're talking hundreds of thousands of veterans dying during the administration and reign of terror of the entity that occupied the White House, and I use the word entity, and those of you who've listened to me know exactly what I mean by that. Now we're going to deal with unknown entities who will come on the scene, promising everything, seducing everyone, and, it's going to be a new world order, but unfortunately, it's going to be what the Bible declares is the worst time in men's history, so much so that if Jesus didn't shorten the days, there'd be no flesh left alive. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you take this to heart. I hope you take it to prayer, and I hope that some of you get a spine, quit hiding behind your BS names, anonymous this, anonymous that. What was the one I got today? I don't know. It was just unbelievable. Oh, something like this, friend of God, okay? Nameless friend of God. Well, if you're worried about people knowing your name, I think you better be more worried about, does God know your name? People say, I don't want to be known for this or that. You see, when the government fears the people, there's liberty, right? What's the statement? When the people fear the government, there's bondage, there's destruction. The idea is this: you've been subjugated, you just don't know it yet. The people that possess the power are not going to let go of their grip in the natural. So again, I encourage all of those of you who understand faith, who understand that God says what he means and means what he says, and that prayer changes everything. The prayers you pray today will determine your footsteps and footprints tomorrow. Some of you basically will leave no footprints that mattered in history. Nothing. Some of you could care less. I've had them. I've had them. When I used to fund projects in Africa, I won't even share some of the comments I got because they're too profane. I know what Gary Haven got from trying to help the Haitians, and nobody's put up more of their own money than him. and, all of the Clinton Foundation crap and all that stuff. Absolute fraud. United Nations, absolute fraud. And ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations now is making war on Donald Trump because they're going to get their little, perpetual pocketbook cut off. If people would get it, maybe God would grant us some more time. I don't know how long we have, but I'll tell you this. When I said it, and I'll stand by it every time I do a broadcast, when I said, before God allows the Russians and Chinese, whether they use the North Koreans or whoever, to destroy the United States, he will reveal the sins of the leaders to the people and the people's sins before God. Hey, pedophilia, no big deal. Cannibalism, who cares? Murder, no issues. Chemtrails, and by the way, chemtrails, most of you that started with me in the 90s, mid-90s, know this. I broke that story. Today, meaning today at this point, 1995, what is that, 22 years ago? Even today, I talk to people that claim they're in the know and they still don't know what chemtrails are. They still don't know what geoengineering is. I'm almost beyond livid. All of the news stories that Mike Adams has broken on vaccines, Natural Health News, one of my favorite sites. All of the broadcasts that Alex Jones has done. What's amazing to me is how many people knock him, but he puts his, on the line. I'll just leave it at that. He's basically been the loudest voice out there, and it might come as a surprise to you. He and I don't talk. I mean, I go on his show whenever he asks me on, but we don't call and shoot the breeze. He's too busy. I'm too busy. And I can tell you this, the guy I wish I had his energy, but I think he's 2/3 or 1/3, however old he is. I'm about 25 years older at least. I thank God for those who have been touched, who have learned, who have read the stuff I've written. I thank God for those of you who have done that. And I pray that the continuing of the information, as long as I'm allowed to give it out. By the way, thank each and every one of you that prays and intercedes for me. I can tell you this, that and you send me the amazing emails, and those of you who have given me real words, not fakey words, the real ones of you who have encouraged me, may the Lord bless you and grant you a cold glass of water and out of your innermost being, fountains of living water. And to those of you who have cursed me, your curses and your desire to kill me be returned unto you sevenfold. And may you be turned over to the powers of darkness so you learn that this is about others people's lives at stake. And if you think that's a bunch of hooey, just look how God dealt with the book of Acts, the Ananias and Sapphira factor. If I write another book, I think that's the title of it. I don't want to do that. Seriously, I don't want to do that. We've got too many projects going. I'd encourage you all to go to my website, stevequayle.com, and go to the Branson Conference. You will hear stuff at Branson Conference that nobody has ever spoken in the world before. God has given certain men certain information. I'm talking about others, not just me, that have been given a supernatural insight into the unfolding of events. And even they are remarking that it's like, quote them, the switch is turned on. This has been bothering me in the back of my mind, and all of a sudden, God has given me an understanding of this. Branson, September 15th through the 17th. And you'll be able to have a coherent presentation of not only what's gone on in the past, not only that which has been hidden, not only the giants, fallen angels, demons, spiritual warfare, genetic manipulation, genetic Armageddon, all the stuff coming at you, but you'll have the best, I believe, presentation of history from a biblical perspective and from a revelation perspective. I pray that not one speaker will make the statement, I think. These men are men of letters and science. These men are some of the best, I believe, researchers in the world. I believe that some of them are incredibly, not only linear, but give some of the best deliveries of their information. Tom Horn, Dr. Lake, I mean, this is pretty interesting. And Derek Gilbert's book, Inception, I just started reading it because he gave me a copy of it to read ahead of time. It's stuff I've never considered. So it's like the ultimate jigsaw puzzle. The jigsaw puzzle now, the borders have been in place. And all those missing pieces are going to be put in by people who have been given a jigsaw puzzle piece and never known how to fit it in because the puzzle wasn't together long enough or in time to add that puzzle piece. Everybody is important in God's kingdom, and everybody has a part to play. But unfortunately, too many people are looking for somebody to be the symphony, and all you want to do is sit in the audience and criticize, well, I really think this note should have been a little higher. And by the way, that one was flat, and I didn't really like the oboe player, and I wish the drummer would have been less noisy, blah, blah, blah. It's important that you understand the time. Do another broadcast, hopefully later in the week. It's